I do want to talk about the possible information on the doorbell cam, though, because I think all of us agree that's the best lead they have. And you heard the sheriff there saying the backpack video has gone nowhere. Now they're wondering whether the guy got it secondhand, so that's why they can't find it on any sort of Walmart video of their suspect purchasing the backpack. Could have been an eBay purchase, etc. The question about what actually happened in that video, where we see they said at 1:47 the Wi-Fi was disconnected, and at 2:12, notwithstanding the disconnection, the system reflected that a body had been identified, an image had been identified. And there was a very interesting discussion with a couple discussions I want to get to on this about how this could have happened, like what might have happened. Here is Jake Green. He's a digital forensics expert, and he spoke with our pal Ashley Banfield about what could have happened. All right, and here's SOT 53, him speculating on what could have happened at 1:47 versus 2:12 here.
Really, the only thing is they wanted to make sure their Wi-Fi deauthentication device was ready to go. So they rode by, checked it from the street, was able to hit that Wi-Fi unit and make sure that it was actually receiving that signal, and then came back a little bit later and hoped it was still working.
And it wasn't.
Right. That's exactly right. Is when they walked up, it was definitely not working.
In plain English, that means that they may have tested the jammer at 1:47 and it's disabled because it's jammed. They drove away for whatever reason and then came back at 2:12 and it had reignited again and was back up and running and now captured this image.
That's right. And perhaps when he walked up, it wasn't running in his pocket.
Okay, so the theory being that the perp had a Wi-Fi jammer. He tested it at 1:47 and it worked. It successfully turned off Nancy Guthrie's Wi-Fi. But by the time he went back at 2:12, it had turned back on, which is why he got caught on camera. And those images were recoverable by the FBI. This does dovetail somewhat with the neighbor's home near Nancy, who's now saying that their Wi-Fi stopped working for a time on the night Nancy went missing. Here is, this is video 50 where Brian Enton shows us this. Let's take a look. Okay, so he's just showing us that that's Nancy's house, and he's at the neighbor's house where the Wi-Fi went, where the cameras are, and where their Wi-Fi stopped working the night that Nancy went missing. I don't know. This is awfully coincidental, Will, that you've got the neighbor's Wi-Fi that night that stops working. It's right, the camera stopped working. I mean, we can presume, I guess, it's possibly Wi-Fi related. And there's been a lot of speculation, as you know, about whether what was in his pocket, the patio suspect, was a Wi-Fi jammer.
Yeah, so the first thing I'd want to check, Megyn, is the timestamp of the neighbor's outage of their Wi-Fi to see whether there is any indication of this corresponding at the same time as Nancy's being taken out or being utilized. I mean, using Wi-Fi jammers is not that difficult. You can get them in a reasonably small size, but you can also check them. I've used them myself on operations and projects. And what you can find is it will knock out not just the Wi-Fi, but 3G, 4G, 5G as well. And you can test it remotely. You don't have to necessarily go up to the target location and test it there. You would generally have it on you. You would check it, make sure it's running. And again, depending on where it might be inserted, if it was put into the rockery at the front of the property as in what we call a green option, so it's disguised or camouflaged, and then it knocks out the Wi-Fi, that's always a possibility. But they're relatively easy to get your hands on, Megyn. And if you do have any kind of Wi-Fi connected cameras, yep, they will knock them out.
I mean, our producer, Jake Whitman, who helped us do that Wi-Fi demonstration, remember that we did with the Nest camera, he tells us that when you approach the Nest doorbell camera and it's on, the doorbell button lights up very bright. He says it happens about 6 feet away as you approach. It's impossible to miss. And it tells you that the camera is capturing you, which I suppose is not a great indicator for an intruder that his Wi-Fi jamming is no longer in effect from 1:47 and that by 2:12 it's gone off, which, you know, again, this may not be a Mensa member that we saw in Nancy's patio fits, and he may have found out the hard way when he returned in this video we're watching here that if he had tried to jam it at 1:47 and now it's 2:12, that has a limited lifespan.
Yeah, and Megyn, I remember watching this video with you minutes after it was released, and we were going through it, frame by frame. We were trying to anyway. Well, I mean, this adds to the pre-offense behavior, which I've talked about a few times in the past, and the attempt, at least, a sophisticated, a method of getting in this house and breaking down, any kind of electrical device or communication device. Obviously, in the bombings of Iran, that's being done by the U.S. They're shutting down internet and disabling all kinds of communication devices. Here's something, of course, very much different, very isolated to one home. And this guy went out of his way to buy this. Now, what does that tell you? What did he know about this house and the system contained therein before even going there? To me, that's even more supportive of the fact that he's been to this house before, January 11th or sometime before that, a worker involved with security systems, who knows what, a vendor of some sort. And it's not just chance that you happen to have, a disabling device such as this for the Wi-Fi. I never knew you could buy these type things. I'll be honest with you. I was sure intel agencies had them, probably the Bureau, et cetera. But I'll go with what Will said. If you can buy these commercially and just use them yourself, I'm not sure there's a legitimate purpose for shutting down someone's Wi-Fi,
right,
other than what this guy's doing. But good for him for at least attempting that, even though it didn't exactly work out. So yeah, not on Men's list. That's for sure.
Megyn,
I'll say
if I
this,
can jump
Will,
in there
I'll give you the floor one second, but I will say this. The way you can avoid this at home is hardwire your cameras. Hardwire. You don't rely on the Wi-Fi. Go ahead, Will.
Yeah, well, Wi-Fi is always going to be fallible. It's a massive risk, and it's always going to be vulnerable. But to cover off a couple of the points that you and Fitz covered, the first would be the actual camera light coming on to detect, obviously, someone coming to the front door. Now, that will have probably very little to do with the Wi-Fi, and will work on what we call a passive infrared. So it's an intrusion detection. So if any object comes close to it, then the light will switch on. The second thing is, with these blockers, as I mentioned, it will also take out all cell phone signals. So if someone's coming in to do, say, a snatch or to break into a property, and they want to disable the communications by anybody inside of the house, other than, of course, the landline, then a blocker is perfect for that, because it will knock out, obviously, any cell phone signal and the ability to be able to utilize it.
Well, how does that affect, if at all, the data that Nancy's pacemaker appears to have been communicating with her phone up until 2:28 that night, Will? So, like, if he was using a Wi-Fi jammer, wouldn't it have presumably knocked out the communication between her cell phone and the pacemaker? I mean, you're saying it would have shut down the communications of the cell phone.
Absolutely. So that raises a very, very interesting question as to the viability of actually using a blocker, because it would have, I mean, without knowing the make and model of the actual pacemaker, whether it worked on a cached information that as soon as the connection was regained, and that would be the blocker's either switched off or it's gone out of the area, then that information pulses through, or how often it's received actually at the base station or at the monitoring center. Again, if it's permanent and it's constant, which I would imagine it should be with a pacemaker, then yes, any interruption to that signal should activate some sort of alarm, or certainly some communication to the user or a monitoring station to say,
and just to clarify, Will,
signal.
Just to clarify, are you saying that in your experience, then a Wi-Fi jammer would knock out, not because, we've all had the situation where our Wi-Fi isn't working on our phone, but the cell service will kick in and keep you able to communicate. But are you saying in your experience, a Wi-Fi jammer would shut down both your Wi-Fi and your cell service?
Yes, it would knock out your data. So any kind of internet connection will be knocked out as well. So if you have a combined unit, so there are lots of different types of units out there you can get your hands on, Megyn. There are ones which will literally take out cell phone signals. There are ones which will take out Wi-Fi, and there are ones which are combined that will do them both.
Wow. This doesn't sound great, James.
Well, no, and we were talking, I think, early on about, as much as we might want to say these people aren't that smart, like I said a long time ago, well, we haven't caught them, so they're not that dumb. And I do want to just highlight, there's a lot of talk within, my circles of FBI folks that, South American South American groups that go around and do these real high-end burglaries that you see with all NFL stars, that this is their MO, that they do pre-operational surveillance, they dress like this, they use jammers, they use burner phones, cell phones. This to me would speak to a lot of what we're seeing here. The inability to have any type of evidence without, for instance, the DNA or any type of, people knowing who these individuals are. Well, if they're coming from out of the country, you're not going to know who they are. Not getting any type of cell phone evidence so far. We haven't seen any updates on that, which we're kind of surprised by. In the last show, we talked a lot about the Bureau's capability. Well, if you're running burner phones, it's really hard to really do anything with that. And then, so that's for me, I think a really good lead that hopefully someone at the Bureau, if Sheriff Nano will let them do it, is working on.
Think about this. In 2006, $20,000 equaled roughly 33 ounces of gold at spot price. At today's prices, those 33 ounces would be worth about $165,000. That's why many smart Americans diversify a portion of their savings into precious metals. And it's why you should consider buying gold from Birch Gold Group. For thousands of years, gold has been a store of wealth, and today it's a crucial part of any balanced strategy. Even better, Birch Gold can help you convert an existing IRA or 401k into a tax-sheltered retirement account in gold. Just text MK to the number 989898 to receive your free info kit on gold. There's no obligation, just useful information. With an A+ rating from the Better Business Bureau and tens of thousands of happy customers, let Birch Gold help you diversify with gold. Now that's peace of mind. Again, text MK to the number 989898 today. Thanks so much for watching. If you like what you just saw, hit the subscribe button for more clips and full episodes.